Hello.
Good morning.
Morning. Sorry. Today is Saturday, February 25th. We usually don't do class on Saturdays, but sometimes we have to change stuff and adjust. So we're here. Let's set our intentions and make aspirations by saying the four immeasurables prayer. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. We're going to talk a little bit. I'm going to say a few words, and Victoria as well, and then we'll meditate, and then we'll take some questions. Oh, I do have something to read for you. 1 second. Sorry. Sorry about that. Well, I'm going to speak to people who have been in this class before, because so many of you are very diligent and come every week and have been with us for a while. If you are new, of course you're welcome to stay, and we'll practice and we'll meditate in a bit. But if you get confused, be patient. You can go to our YouTube, which is Meditation with Michael Imperioli YouTube channel, and look at the first class of this year, which was somewhere around mid-January, and you'll get the basic technique for meditation. But I want to speak a little bit to those students who have been with us for a bit. We have been talking of late about meditation not being just another wellness modality. Or even though you may have come to meditation and even come to Buddhism, perhaps, seeking wellness, and that's okay. Actually, that's, makes a lot of sense. But what really is meditation? You know what I mean? The state of meditation. What we're doing is resting in our mind, sitting in our mind, staying with our mind, looking at our mind. That's really not a thing that somebody's invented. It's us being with our mind. It's just our minds are so busy and have been so habituated and conditioned to project outward, to process everything through the input we get from the outer world and the separation between our subjective experience and what we think is an objective view. That's a little bit heady, but basically what I'm saying is meditation is really very simple. We work with our thoughts, we focus on the breath, or we use the visualization of the cloud as a thought arising in the sky-like spaciousness of mind. And we talk about just notice the thought, notice that we're thinking, and then let it go. But when we notice, we should pay particular attention to what we are noticing. And I've spoken before about part of this practice is becoming brutally honest with ourselves. Brutal is a very hard word, but I find a lot of new agey wellness modalities all about, accepting everything, and you're it's about self-worth and all those things, which are very good qualities, but you're not going to make any progress unless you really see where your pitfalls are, where you're petty, where you're aggressive, where you're competitive, where you're jealous. And that takes a lot of honesty, because what we do is we justify a lot of negative behaviors. Well, I'm jealous because I should have what that person has. I've worked really hard. That person hasn't worked really hard. Why does that person get that? And why don't I? And, I'm angry because that person mistreated me, and that person shouldn't mistreat me, right? All legitimate. But we use meditation to see what's going on in our mind, to see what these triggers are, to see what the habitual patterns are of our negative qualities, of the things that we don't like to admit about ourselves. We can use meditation to kind of as another adornment, you know what I mean, as another credential. I'm a Buddhist, I'm a meditator, as another amplification of the ego. And that's where things get very tricky. That's called spiritual materialism. For instance, right? I'm an actor, right? So automatically, I've chosen this profession as an actor, someone who wants to be seen, who wants to be on the stage for many other people to look at, right? So there's a very strong element of egocentricity about that. Not completely. There's other aspects to it. There's, of course, artistic aspects to it, and other things that are not that, but that's of course a thing. So now as this actor who has this tendency toward egocentricity, now teaching a class of meditation, saying he's a Buddhist, many people in different countries come online. Now I wear this hat of being even more special. I'm teaching Buddhism. I'm not just an actor. I'm also this spiritual person who's a Buddhist, who's special, who's doing good in the world. And all these things reify and amplify the ego. But with meditation, I can look at that and say, okay, that's there, but that's where I'm at, and then let it go. At the same time, I think doing this class is very meaningful. It actually helps my practice a lot to have to think about what to talk about. When I sit down to practice, I think about this class and how I'm going to talk about my practice and communicate it to you. I know for a fact that the practice of meditation and the study of Buddhism has brought great benefit into my life and into Victoria's life. And of course, I want that for all of you. I feel very, very loving to all of you for being here, because I know your diligence, and it touches my heart, right? Even me saying something like that, there's a flip side of ego saying, oh, I'm such a benevolent, loving person. You can wear, but that's okay, is what I'm saying. We don't have to say, you're bad, look at what a phony you are. We're human beings. We're not, enlightened masters. Maybe several lifetimes down the road, or we will be at some point. That doesn't mean we can't do some work and aspire to be good and be a benefit to others, because we can. We don't have to be enlightened to be a benefit to other beings. But the spiritual path really demands us to start to see what's going on there. So our choices, our actions in body, speech, and mind cannot just be motivated by these more base things, by that more grasping thing, by that more spiritual materialism, egocentricity, competitiveness, aggression, all those things. Because we can't really start to transcend those things unless we know that they're there, right? As we're talking about Buddha nature being within, we're not getting it from without. We're not getting it from this meditation. We're not getting it from our teacher. It's there. The methods and the teachings and the practices clear away the obscurations from karmic imprints, habitual patterns, and allow that Buddha nature to emerge, right? But that's only going to happen if we know what these karmic imprints, what these habitual patterns are, what these tendencies of ego are. So as we meditate and we see the thought arise, start to take notice of its aroma, its quality, its taste. That's a competitive thought. And then let it go. Just see it for what it is. We always say, don't get involved in the story. Don't get involved in the story of it, the drama of it. I'm angry because this person did that. I should have spoke up. I should have said, we're not talking about that. We're just recognizing the quality of the thought and then letting it go. We're seeing what's going on. I think it's really important, and that's where the progress is going to be. The progress we have, if we all have Buddha nature, we already have all those great qualities. We already have, if we have Buddha nature, we have patience within us. We have loving kindness within us. We have, altruistic intent. We have compassion. So it's an inside job. You know what I mean? And the inside is looking at how our mind works, where it gets stuck, what are the common themes that keep arising, you know what I mean? And not being afraid of that. Not being afraid to say, I'm a human being who's has a lot of, karmic imprints from many, many, many lifetimes. And somehow I've managed to wake up in this current incarnation and saying, I want to move beyond that. And I really believe in the idea of being a benefit to other beings and not just being here to, consume and to, amass more material goods or whatever, the base motivations can lead us, it's not just Darwinian. This is a book called Sparks. We've spoken about this author, James Lowe. There's one thing I just want to read about compassion, and then Victoria's going to speak. He's talking about his teacher, his Lama, who was a Tibetan Buddhist Lama. Idiot compassion, as referred to by my Lama, means indulging in vibrating at other people's distress. True and useful compassion means to have a noble mind. A noble mind is a mind with dignity. When people become caught up in their suffering, they often lose their dignity. They become helpless and useless and want to be saved. The actual way to help people is to bring them back to their dignity. If you encourage someone to be a victim, dependent, useless, and hopeless, this is to insult the actual basis of their existence, their own ever pure source. Talking about compassion, which often gets confused and labeled more as pity. When you walk down the street, you see somebody begging for money, and you may give them $1, out of pity. And pity also kind of includes the fact that you're almost glad that you're not that person, this person. So, when the true nature of compassion from this Buddhist point of view is about dignity, ask that person their name, maybe have a conversation, maybe, try to understand that very easily you may end up homeless because of, economic situations and health situations or whatever, misfortune, tragedy, all those things. Dignity. Sogyal Rinpoche, who's another great Buddhist Lama, used to say, compassion is about respect. It's not about pity. It's not about looking down, I have this and this one doesn't, and that poor person. We can couch that as something very altruistic and, kind, but it's much kinder to make intentions to bring people to their dignity and to their own self-respect and your respect towards them. With that, Victoria is going to speak for a bit.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. My all sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may I establish them in complete, unsurpassed, and perfect Buddhahood. First verse of our daily prayers. We've been speaking a lot in the last couple of weeks. We've been speaking about autonomy and loss of freedom. And that has to do with the two modalities, I hate that buzzword, but with the two ways of how we can experience and perceive the world. On the one hand, there is wisdom, and on the other hand, there is ignorance. So I would like to just start with the two hypothetical situations through the two lenses, looking at the same situation through the two lenses. So I work in this beautiful office. I go to work. I'm very happy. I walk into my office. I say hello to everyone. People are smiling back at me. I enjoy their conversation. I enjoy their company. I go into my particular office. I love the color. I love the view. I love my desk. All those things are beautiful. And a person who is my friend, who actually recommended for me for this job, comes into the office, and that person says, "You're fired." The way of perceiving this through ignorance would be a scenario like this. Immediately, there is the darkening of everything. I am now on fire. The flames of afflictions are horrendous. I am looking at that person who was a moment ago, just a moment ago, was my friend, and now he's my enemy, and I hate him. I hate the walls, I hate the view, I hate my desk. Everything is compressed. And in my mind, what is happening is everything is going through the meat grinder of the me, of the ego. How could he say that to me? How could they do that to me? I walk out of the door and it's like a black pit. Now, not just my anger is triggered, but also my jealousy is triggered. How could they continue to work? I am better than them. You wish that a bottomless pit would open and all these smiling faces that you saw 3 minutes ago would fall and crack underneath so they don't see you, so that I don't have to experience this embarrassment in front of all these coworkers. I get in the car and I am still on fire. And now I'm speeding or cursing or doing all these kinds of things. I get home and I'm afraid and I'm embarrassed to tell my wife, so I just scream at her and I manipulate her and whatever. I do that to my children. I wake up the next day and I continue, and all of this happens with this feeling, but I am right to feel so. They did this to me. How could they do this to me? You know, that is a scenario of when the ego is the eye through which we're looking at everything that arises. Now, the minute we allow this black monster to be triggered out of our heart, that is the moment of suffering. That is the making of the suffering. That is the suffering factory. At the same time, two things are happening. We are producing our own suffering now and in the future. We are creating samsara because we are already setting up that energy. We're releasing that energy like a disease into the atmosphere, poisoning everything. And that energy will eventually come back to us, because remember, our inner state, the way that we see the world is a reflection of our inner state. Most likely we will remain in that kind of anger, and that anger is already magnetizing and bringing forth future things of the same quality. We will be seeing others, and we will be magnetizing situations to ourselves based on that energy. When you're hot and you're burning everything in your way. So that fire is already spreading, and we will be walking into that fire again and again and again. That is what is called patterns. This is the patterns in which our energy takes shape. And these patterns are behaviors. They create us, they create our environment, and they create us. The more we repeat them, we'll be triggered by them instantaneously, because we will eventually, when you spend enough time in anger, in these kinds of mental states, you open your eyes and everything is already like dark and habitually just against me, and everybody's an enemy, and how could they do this to me? How could they say that to me? How can they ignore me? My pain is so severe. Notice this compressed space of the me. Everything is very, very shrunken, and the world becomes more and more shrunken into that dark space. Even though that outer monster, the fire, when it comes out of us, we put a manhole cover, the shiny little conceptual thing, and say, but I'm right. I am right to feel this way. Why shouldn't I feel this way? Why shouldn't I be angry? They made me angry. So that's one scenario. We call that ignorance because it is ignorance because it is that shrunken state of me stupidity, of me darkness. Here's another scenario, the same scenario. We walk into the office, you know, we on the way in, we're happy to arrive. We're happy getting out of the car in the parking lot. We're looking forward to our day. We say hello to all the people in the office. We go into our office with a smile. We're happy. We're drinking our coffee. That same friend walks in, and the same event, we're living through it. It's like a different version of the same movie. The same friend, that same person who got me a job, walks in the office and says, "You're fired." Now, this is the decisive moment. If it's going to be, whether it's going to be ignorance or it's going to be wisdom, the decisive moment is this. When that movement of karmic wind comes and sweeps into our existence so very, very forcefully, we can either go into that childish dark cave of the ego with the me, woe is me thing, or we bring decisively all the practice that we have gathered thus far, and we hold the mind. We bring this stillness. We need that moment of stillness. We need the practice that we have accumulated sitting on the cushion right into that very moment, this difficult moment, because the difficult is our own mind created. However, the moment is just a moment. And if we for a moment pause and not just jump out with the fire and strike the match and get set on fire and then set the world on fire, we bring our practice, we bring the stillness of the mind. We inhale, we check our inner condition, and then we exhale, we place our attention into space. At that moment, instead of setting ourselves on fire, we can ask ourselves the only thing that there is: what is this wind? What is this change? Where am I supposed to be now? Why am I getting rerouted? Perhaps I'm supposed to be somewhere else. And we just remain open. We don't know yet. Not all of it hasn't happened yet. We're still in it. We're experiencing reality and appearances of reality as it arises. And out of that space, if we hold our natural position and don't jump right into this afflictive mental state of that me compression, but if we're open and we're perceiving what is happening, we are available to the world. We can also look at that guy who brought me that news, and instead of seeing an enemy, we can say, oh my God, he may have lost his job because the company is shrinking, they're firing so many people. He may have lost his job. He may have a child in the hospital with a brain tumor and he needs his insurance. He needs this job more than I do. Maybe I'm just a single person. You know, maybe my family can help me, but he doesn't have the same kinds of circumstances. As I step out into the office, I may think, all these people, they may need this job more than I do. They may have much more difficult circumstances. As I get into the car and somebody rushes past me, I don't want to kill them and destroy them because I am afflicted and burning on fire in my ego mind. But I may think, maybe they're rushing because they got a phone call and they need to get to the hospital. Maybe they had horrendous news. In either case, if that person is afflicted, may I wish them to get there safely and be okay on the road and getting there. So these are the two different kinds of perceiving the world, of the identical situation, of the identical event arising, but experiencing them through the wisdom mind, or experiencing them through the being triggered through our ego mind. Our ego mind, our habitual patterns, will always lead us into exactly one and the same space, and they will harden over and over. The more we repeat the same kinds of moods and attitudes, the more they will arise naturally. And so what will happen is the food and drink that are meant for enjoyment will eventually start killing us, because in those compressed mental states, with the shrinkage, what happens is in the afflicted mental states, everything shrinks and the me movie becomes very, very compressed, and very normal things of the world become extremely, extremely difficult. The other way of perceiving the world is holding our seat, bringing our practice, placing our exhalation, inhaling, seeing what the situation is, and exhaling and planting a stake of awareness deeply in space, but remaining open, not allowing this shrinkage of the little, when we were very small children, he did this to me, she did this to me. Those are kinds of mental processes of a 2-year-old. We as adults, we cannot continue in these kinds of patterns. These patterns also kill us internally. They are the cause of suffering. There is no other suffering. When we remain open to what is, first of all, we allow it to pass through us like water, and we also always know in the clarity of that space what to do, because we experience that moment as a thing, but we don't get engulfed in it. It doesn't drown us. We can open beyond that moment to our spaciousness, and we can open to others in that moment too, because remember, we're barely ever experiencing anything in solitude. Our whole life is the very nature of interdependence. We're never ever experiencing anything in solitude. And remember too that when we are on fire and we open our mouth, our eyes, or we wave our hand, the other person also goes on fire very often. Our environment goes on fire. Our family goes on fire. Everything goes on fire together with us. So for multitude of reasons, but especially for the reason of making a decision, I'm going to be free. Not allow yourself be triggered. Do not allow yourself to use these dumb excuses. He did, a 2-year-old says, he did it to me. This is my card. I wanted it, so I hit him. We cannot function like that, because the result of that functioning is the hardening of these habitual patterns until these patterns become just addictions. And every day we wake up, we're either hungry or we're thirsting and we're craving. The world of the ego becomes more narrow and narrow and narrow when one thing is possessing us so fully and completely. That is the very basis of addiction, is when the compression of the me becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. It becomes such a difficult, narrow space. And in that space, needless to say, we're only available to the object of our fixation. We're only available to this reflection of this kind of golem mind. And we project it onto everything. So we're not experiencing the world, we're only experiencing our projections. Whereas wisdom mind is staying open and holding firm, holding your place, being open to the bigger space, which is what our awareness is. Our awareness is always the ultimate infinite space within which appearances arise. And if we're not allowing these appearances to arise and squeeze them into the meat grinder of the ego, that's when we will experience ourselves and we will experience others. And we won't need to ask ourselves like dummies, what is compassion? Most of the time when we say those kinds of things, they are nothing but buzzwords, because we don't know ourselves, we're not open to ourselves, and we don't know others because we grind them through that afflictive mental space of the ego. And I just wanted to say that suffering is the mind processing the arising situations through the filter of the me. How can they do this to me? How can they say this to me? Through my expectations, through my judgments, through my hopes and fears, i.e., my desires and aversions. That is the definition of suffering, when we stick what is happening into the grinder of the ego, instead of embracing the change, the arising, the energy which is now redirecting us, probably to a much better place. Not probably, actually, everything should be our teacher. Everything that arises in our life arises as a result of karmic energy. But be sure that when energies arise, we are purifying ourselves and we are moving to other further places beyond the constrictions of the ego. We need to move beyond these habitual patterns to be able to really grow. There's no other way. Reality is the mirror reflection of our inner state. So we always have to check our inner state. We must always ask, how is my mind? If you see your mind compressed and constricted, the me and its object of desire or the object of aversion, we're in trouble. At the same time, when we can experience the most difficult situation with a very spacious mind, that's why we practice, to bring and bear down the power of our practice into spaces which are like this. And if we can do it, we can see that when we're being redirected, we're actually moving in a very positive direction. Also, at the same time, we are gaining our freedom by not being set on fire by a match. You know, in this way, when we experience difficult people with preparation and patience, with the spaciousness of awareness, we can see them and we can have compassion for them because we're open to them. We're watching someone being afflicted and on fire, but we don't, you know, when we touch them, we're prepared. We're like firemen. We put on the mask, we put on the gear, we come with the water instead of a match. To experience reality, we have to empty out the tank. Stop running the habitual movie on our screen and to be open to see a new film as it arises. That's what it means to know reality, not be disconnected to it through running the same habitual movie. Allow reality to arise by connecting to your spaciousness. Be open to others. When you're dealing with difficult people, be open to them. And the biggest thing that I want to say is what Michael touched upon is start also by being open to yourself. Know who you are. Be open to your acceptance and don't start with the movie. You know, for example, I can talk about myself. I cannot talk about anyone else. I can only know myself. So I'm going to start like this. I'm not going to start with, I'm Victoria, I'm married to this famous guy, blah, blah, blah. You know, I'm a designer. This is a house of cards because all this big, you know, dreamy stuff, well, tomorrow I could be in an accident and tomorrow I'm not Victoria the designer. I could be Victoria the invalid suffering with permanent injuries. So start with really who we are. Me, Victoria, I'm very arrogant because that's my cover for ignorance. You know, when I don't know things, I cover it with, oh, but I know it. I'm jealous and very competitive. I grew up like that, whatever. These are my patterns. But it's okay to start here. It's actually a blessing to know who and what we are. Ultimately, we're here in samsara not because we're Buddhas. We are Buddhas in progress. We are working toward that. We can only work toward that by knowing where our feet are. And so that we can take the next step, we have to be planted in reality. And when we're open to ourselves, when we know we're imperfect, we're much likely to be open to others because we have spaciousness for them too. But if we pretend like we're these amazing, wonderful people, I'm good, but he's bad, that is when we strike the match. And that is when we separate from reality. And that is when we create suffering. So when we meditate, it is very advisable in a very controlled kind of a way. Take a difficult situation and go through entire range of the 5 afflictive emotions. Experience a situation where you're ignorant, but you're covering with the shiny, you know, with the shiny concept and say, no, I'm ignorant, I know better than that person. Experience your addiction, experience desire, you know, experience your desire as addiction to something that's possessing you, experience it. Experience your anger. Take a difficult person and experience on the cushion that flavor of experience. Don't think about them. Think about your inner state. Don't think about the object. The objects never bind us. Experience your jealousy. Be open to these experiences. This is what meditation space is for. Bring, maybe not the most difficult situation in your life, but bring that into your experience and watch it dissolve, because you have to, in meditation, we connect to our bigger space and we allow anything to arise and we allow it to dissolve back right into the skies. Where do you think all that stuff that arises, the afflictions, these thoughts, these concepts that drive me mad and don't let me sleep and allow me to hurt others and set my environment, they arise in the space of our awareness. They also vanish into the space of our awareness. Let it, allow it, make that the space of meditation. Experience the flavor of each of these 5 afflictions, so that when they arise, instead of manholing with a shiny concept, that you know when this monster, the black tentacled thing, arises and you're willing to set the world on fire, or the green sticky monster comes out, the jealousy arises, or the addiction comes out. You know, the mind, the conceptual mind is just a tool. The conceptual mind will tell you when you're an alcoholic falling off the cliff, go ahead, have that drink because you deserve it, you had a rough day. So it's obviously not the conceptual mind. The ego will drive us off the cliff. It is the wisdom mind that will tell us, no, I can be free of this. I don't need to do this. I can sit and wait the storm out. I can be in the shelter of my openness, and I'm just going to sit here with my difficult feeling. I will let it arise, and then I will let it dissolve. Stay with your wisdom mind, connect to your spaciousness, bring practice to its true fruition.
Thank you very much. Let's meditate.
If we bring a difficult person to mind in order to experience the flavor of the afflictive emotion arising and dissolving, focus on your openness, the space of awareness itself. And at the same time, wish for that difficult person to experience the same openness of awareness, so their afflictions may also dissolve. Always reconnect to the space of awareness. Things will arise inside it, they will dissolve in it, and you will naturally know exactly what to do out of that space, out of the clarity of the mind. This is our mind. This is our own space, and no one can pollute it, and nothing can possess it. And just always remember and come back to that quality. Just put your breath right into the center of space and anchor to the openness of awareness, to its luminous quality. Feel the mind opening and being present and not shrinking and not following conceptual arisings, and relax the conceptual mind. It's just like little clouds moving through the sky. Try to be aware in 360-degree manner with all your senses, with your smell and eyes and hearing and touch all being present and aware, but connecting to the bigger space than just this now. The space of awareness.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. I'm going to go to some questions. There's a Q&A function in the Zoom toolbar. And you can ask about anything we've spoken about today or about, the practice itself. Does consuming medical cannabis in any way hinder one's using this type of meditation? I don't know. I'll be honest with you. If you have to have medical cannabis for a medical condition and you've been prescribed that and it requires you to do it all the time, then I guess you don't have a choice. But if you don't have to use it all the time, I would suggest meditating when you're not under the influence, just because that's what my teacher has asked. I'm not sure at what age you started this path, but what way would you say your practice is most matured since your introduction to Buddhism? Is there anything you wish you had known then that you know now? Yeah, probably everything that I've learned I wish I knew then. No, I think, you start to just see yourself with some more honesty, rather than hiding behind justifications and things like that, justifying, our negative qualities. Just seeing that they're there, being okay with the fact that they're there, and trying to, be mindful in a way that you're not falling victim to them and under their influence constantly and all the time. I guess, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I don't want to go into what I feel I've changed or not changed, but obviously, if you're really practicing these things, you start to move your mind towards wanting to somehow be of benefit to others. And that's really important. How often do you meditate and for how long?
Which Michael and I have daily practice. We both do a morning session. Occasionally we do an evening session. It's great to be able to start your day with the right intention. Also really to connect to the spaciousness of your mind so that when things are arising during the day, you're not carried away by them and the conceptual movie stories that we tell ourselves. In the evening is really great to examine your day and to be able to aspire to do this, things that benefit, and virtuous things as opposed to unvirtuous things. We don't punish ourselves and we are not consumed by guilt when we examine things that we've done wrong. What we do is we aspire not to do that or correct the path and to do it more meaningfully with a greater degree of awareness and compassion, obviously. You can do it for as long as it's comfortable for you and you build more up to it. Needless to say, it takes a certain amount of time to settle the mind down before we can even experience anything that we call mental spaciousness. So it's very important to get the fluff down and then not stir the water and have all the conceptual stuff arise again. So as long as it takes you, but just it's really very beneficial to do a regular practice. morning and evening, at least one of those periods, whatever your lifestyle permits you. And eventually you can build up to more.
It's good to start if you're beginning with short sessions, kind of like what we did today. Following that question, can you talk more about setting intentions, what it means, and how to do it?
Setting intentions, you say to yourself, I will not be triggered by my habitual patterns. That can only start when we know where we are. Michael and I have both touched on that. Start where you are. Knowing where one is of an extreme benefit, because if the doctor doesn't give a diagnosis, how can a medicine be prescribed? So when we start where we are, we know exactly what we have to work on. We know what the triggers, what the pitfalls will be, and we can watch for those kinds of things. At the same time, we will be very mindful of the space shrinking as it happens in the ego, that very compressed space. And in extreme cases, we know where it goes, the extreme compression, the severe depression, suicidal kinds of thoughts. And we make the intention of being open to all experiences as they arise, especially being open to others. If we're not open to them, there is no chance in the world for us to know who they are or to cultivate compassion. And compassion is a meaningless word if we're not open to others. Otherwise, it's just some kind of a hypothetical little whatever invention of our mind. Being open and allowing everything to take place within the space of our freedom, not being triggered. I set my intention on that. And of course, setting intention on virtue as opposed to non-virtue, and that includes benefiting others. All of our energy should be on benefiting others, because it's the only place that is exactly the counter position to being compressed into the ego space of ignorance. So that's how we set the intention. And start small. Don't set yourself crazy intentions. Today I'll give away all of my wealth and do all this thing. Do something, a small thing, help your older neighbor buy groceries, or something small, something palpable, not just some hypothetical thing, something palpable. And that's how you learn the quality, the feeling of that intention. For example, in monasteries, young monks, who are beginners, who just took vows, are often encouraged to go and buy up all the animals in slaughterhouses and release them, so that you can feel the immediacy of death, so you can know it palpably what that feeling is. Do a small thing and have it be palpable. And that's, and every day you set your intentions that way. Find one thing that you can do that is of benefit, and really feel the quality of that energy, and know that you can cultivate it and increase it. And also set your intention not to be triggered by difficult people. That's also very important. Before you go into a situation with a difficult person, we all have them in our life. We're all in samsara. So this is where we are. This is what the substance of our life is. Vow to yourself, I will not be triggered. I will remain open, and I will be open to his difficulty, to her difficulty, to their difficulty. And out of that space, I will act, not react. And that's how you set your intention.
Can you expand on the idea of reality experienced as projections, as Victoria put it, how that connects to the self versus the ego versus humanity? Well, we're talking about projections because we color everything that we see and take in through our own likes, dislikes, what we agree with, what we don't agree with, what we're for, what we're against, what our history is, what our, experiences have led us, So someone approaches us in a certain way they look a certain way, they're dressed a certain way. Our mind immediately compares them to other people we've met that looked like that behaved like that. So we're getting a very, 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 very narrow subjective point of view of this outer thing. So what we're talking about is relating more to openness of experience, right? In meditation, we're trying to go beyond these like knee-jerk reactions, conditioned response, habitual patterns, and just being open to what's there. Okay, this person is in your field of vision and your field of experience now, instead of immediately coming up with 20 presuppositions about this, prejudices and ideas and things based on, your own experience and your own sometimes very negative, afflictive emotions. Just be open to to what's going on, to what's in front of you, without like bringing in all this past baggage. Open to experience. There's a humility in that. There's a humility in not knowing everything about everybody, not assuming certain things. Even people who you automatically assume, someone might be wearing a MAGA hat, to make America great, which automatically you file them off as this or that politically, whatever that is. But they're not just a hat. You know what I mean? I'm not saying I agree, I disagree, they're going to be for this or pro this or anti that. I don't know. That's an extreme example, right? Because there's obviously some statement they're making by wearing this thing. But I'm saying, the more we can just be open to experience, the more I think the more honest we'll be with ourselves. The less victimized we will by these conditioned response and habitual patterns and afflictive emotions.
If I may add, it's a really great question because it's like the heart, the core of what practice is. What happens is that when we live through projection and never get out of the movie, we actually never experience reality. Our karmic wind just pushes us around between our likes and dislikes, our fears and hopes. We never actually leave that bad dream. And so instead of experiencing the world and being open to things, allowing things to arise in our field of experience, in our field, in the space of awareness, we impose a concept. And so we're basically just re-triggering, regurgitating the same bad dream over and over again. He's gay, right? He's Jew, he's that, he's an immigrant, he's that, he's MAGA. What happens, that concept, it seems like it's just one concept, just one name, but it's actually not, because inside that concept are all the likes, dislikes, hopes, and fears are already inside it. There's a huge monster underneath the manhole cover, that shiny little concept. Underneath it is, he's bad, he's dangerous, he will take my things, I have to kill him, and etc. And underneath one concept lies a whole pit of snakes and scorpions. And so we're not experiencing the world at all, because we're now, as soon as we project a conceptual thing on someone of that nature, with all the emotions and things that are attached to it, we're no longer experiencing the person. In other words, we're not experiencing reality, because for us to experience reality, yes, we have concepts and things will arise, but we have to relax them in order to experience something. And when we experience something and we can relax our conceptual mind, we can relax our hopes and fears, we can relax our ego and all of these kinds of constructed kinds of things, we can experience things, and out of clarity we can actually get to know them. Yes, we will get to know them in a limited way, but it's a much better way than not experiencing them at all and just re-triggering our old hopes and fears, our likes and dislikes. And it's a very important practice question, and thank you for asking that, because the difference is between just staying in the nightmare of the ego or actually being open to experience the world. Because if we don't experience the world, we don't know where we're supposed to be going ourselves. Why does that experience come into my field of vision? Why do I meet that person? Why are they in front of me? Why do I have that difficult or that beautiful person in my field of experience? Those are things by which we then know how to navigate through our life in a meaningful way. If we don't ask ourselves that question, if we don't experience the things that arise before us, we're actually not living. We're just kind of churning in this kind of a nightmarish co-produce socially dream. We can't talk about originality the minute we speak a language we've entered into a social sphere. We're co-created. So the only original moment that we have is the moment of experience by being open.
As far as books, especially for beginners, go to the Solidago Productions website, and there's books there, and there's names of teachers that have books. For beginners, lately I've been recommending The Power of Mind by Khentrul Lodro Thaye Rinpoche, Khentrul Thaye, sorry, Khentrul LodroThaye. A lot of people are asking very similar questions about dealing with a difficult person, which we talk about this over and over and over and over again. And I think a lot of people feel their difficult person at work or in their family is somehow much more difficult to deal with than anything we're talking about in class. But Victoria was talking about during meditation, thinking of someone who's suffering or someone we have afflictive anger towards or things, and bringing them into our meditation. Tonglen is another practice that we've spoken about in this class. Remember that this is part of the process of why we're doing this, so we can start to do it. It's not going to be instantaneous. There's nothing I'm going to say here that's going to say, that's immediately going to make everything easier immediately. It's a process and you have to work for it. All these things we're talking about are examining our mind, going beyond that, having some spaciousness. All this practice is exactly for those things. It's not for when things are easy, So there's several, questions that, of the same flavor, but I think we've really addressed that. And kind of address it every week. That's the work. If it was easy, we'd already have it conquered,
We'd be Buddhists.
Someone says I recommend to use apps for meditation. I don't know anything about meditation apps, so I can't really speak to that.
But you can set your clock and once an hour connect to your mind. You can go from unawareness into awareness by simply breathing. But we do have to remind ourselves until the practice really takes root and it becomes part and substance of our existence. So for beginners, it's very useful maybe setting your that's what I used to do. I would set my alarm for once an hour. I would hear the ring and I would trigger my mind to check my inner state to see if it's polluted or if it's open. And that's how you get really anchored into practice.
Do you always do silent meditation or do you enjoy guided as well? Whatever. We do guided in the class to teach it, really, personal practice, I don't do a guided meditation, but we do guided here to kind of introduce these concepts to people who are new.
But if it works for you and it makes you mindful to hear someone's voice to kind of trigger that response of connecting to your spaciousness, to your luminosity, in the beginning, it's all good. In the beginning, the important thing is just remember, we here talk about the Buddhist path, and the entirety of Buddhist path is only and exclusively through all the 84,000 different methods is to point to the nature of our mind. Now, the nature of our mind is not, it doesn't belong to this one or to this one or to that one. No one created it. It is our own. So all the teachings are aimed only toward the recognition of our nature, of our basis.
Are all the four measurables different aspects of love, or do you find that compassion is the closest to love? The four measurables are love, compassion, joy, and equanimity.
And we'll cover it actually starting next week.
Yeah. Is compassion closest to love?
Well, there's no compassion without
love.
Yeah. But it's not as simple as when we just blab it out. It's a very complex topic. We'll cover it next week. We will start with the the last one. What is equanimity? What does it mean, rest in equanimity? Or what is joy, when we can rejoice for others, for their good qualities, for the things they have. Those are very difficult topics. They're actually not as just a simple, naive little, uh, cuddly things as we think of. But we will start that discussion next week. So. And there's a lot of teachings on the four immeasurables. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube on four immeasurables. Garchen Rinpoche, lots of different teachers. There's such a big amount. Just please try to find teachers with a lineage, with an uninterrupted lineage, not just people reinterpreting and regurgitating in some kind of a cultural context that's devoid really of the sense of Dharma, because it's about not becoming confused. It's not about reinterpreting things to the point of where they lose color and substance.
Yeah, we mention a lot of teachers on the Solidago Productions website. We exactly following up on what Victoria's saying. This is a living wisdom tradition that has been passed down from the Buddha to his students, to teachers, to students for 2,500 years, and connecting to that authentic lineage with someone who's upholding that brings an enormous blessing. And by blessing we mean a true connection to that wisdom tradition. And they are here, they are alive, they're among us. You can access them. There's teachings like this, like a Zoom webinar with these great lamas. Victoria and I are fellow students who are telling you what we've learned from these teachers. But we encourage, if these things really are of interest to you, to seek them out. If you can go in person to see them, if you can do retreats, if you're so inspired, if you want to watch them on YouTube, or if you want to watch live webinars, they're there. These teachings are alive and thriving and accessible. We encourage you to go out there and go and experience them.
Also when we experience great masters, especially in a private setting where we become students of great lamas, it is very easy then to recollect how a great master like that can have all the love and compassion for a defective, small-minded, stupid creature like myself. That allows me to bring that memory into situations where I'm dealing with other difficult people and recollect how, if they have this love for me with all of my defects, I must have that love for others too when I meet them, because it's my karma to meet these difficult people. Nothing arises as an accidental thing. We have certain things in our life because it is our karmic reality to be facing exactly this, what arises. And so to do it in the two modalities, as I spoke about earlier, within ignorance or within the space of awareness, is very important. And when we experience great beings, whether it's Christ for you, or it's a mother who loved you, or your teacher, someone who gave you love and was able to tolerate all of your smallness and all of the darkness and all the, we recollect their love, we recollect that sun in moments of difficulty. And we all have that capacity. We all have that capacity. None of us are devoid of capacity of dealing with difficulties and dealing with them through love and through spaciousness and through warmth. We've all received it and we all have it. So we just have to access it.
And the last thing I'll say, a lot of us have questions about dealing with difficult people. That's a huge one and a constant one. Fear of being compassionate, fear of opening up, getting difficulty in forgiving people, forgiving ourselves. A lot of these things have to be done through practice and regular practice. It's not just me saying, try this or try that. You know, the practice that we're working on here week after week, day after day, these things have to be cultivated to start to shift these things. It's, you know, you have to be patient for yourself. And I don't always want to answer these questions in a vacuum, you know. Give yourself a chunk of time of really applying these practices before and just see how these things that have been constant issues in your life, see if they start to shift, see if they start to change, really start to take this seriously, really make a commitment if you want to change and if you want to see some things shift and different results of the same things.
Yeah, and practice has to begin with knowing where we are. If I am angry right now, then I have to know that I am suffering. And you have to make a commitment out of that and say, I do not wish this space of pollution. I do not want to be angry. I do not want to react to the world through the tentacles of anger and set everything on fire. I will extinguish this fire in myself to benefit all others. Remember, when we are extinguishing our own polluted mental states, we are extinguishing the pollution that we will, in the state of ignorance, spread on all others. So that's already a great act of compassion. We are included in that act of compassion because we're extinguishing the fire inside us, so it benefits us, and we're also extinguishing that fire as not to spread it and pollute by using our body, speech, and mind energy and put it out there into the universe, because one drop of poison can pollute a whole river, and we remember that and we work on that.
Okay, finally, we'll dedicate the merit to the benefit of all beings from today's class. By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment, conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. And thank you to our producer, Nick Solidago, for allowing this class to happen. See you next week.